all you happy event planners, happy speakers, happy entertainers, and happy attendees. This is Amy Dix with Choose Happy, another episode of The Happy Event Planner. And today we have Ashlen Hilliard with us. I'm so excited to talk to Ashlen. We kind of met through a roundabout way, which we will certainly talk about here in just a moment. But Ashlen works for an organization, the ICSA, and the ICSA is the International Cult Study Association. Did I get that right? Studies Association. You know, it's plural. It's plural, not singular. International Cultic Studies Association.
Yeah.
And you've been with them now for 2 years, 2.5 years.
2.5, yeah.
Let's get that half in.
I know, get that half. Yeah.
Well, that half does matter. So so tell us, are you you're on the event planning side? You organize kind of like the annual conference. Tell us a little bit about what that annual conference looks like.
Sure. I wear a lot of different hats with ICSA. And you did really well with the name pronunciation, by the way. International Cultic Studies Association. Say that 5 times fast and see how you do. It's really hard. So I wear a lot of different hats. I do everything from organizing events for the organization to producing content, media that comes out, promotional stuff, to also interacting with families who have loved ones in cultic groups who write me, who are seeking advice or connections or referrals to people in the field who they can further communicate with for help. So I'm very much so on the frontline end of things, but also do the event organization for the organization. So we have typically one large annual conference every year. Because of the pandemic, we took our first annual conference and it went entirely virtual this past July. And that had a lot of challenges in that, first off, we as an organization serve many different constituencies. It's not like the American Psychological Association where you're guaranteed to just get like mental health professionals who attend that conference. The International Cultic Studies Association serves people who are researching the cultic phenomenon in the field. They help family members who have loved ones in cultic groups. They serve those who are in the educational side of things who want to bring more awareness to these sorts of phenomenons. And then we also help former members of cultic groups directly, those who have left cultic or psychologically abusive situations. We provide resources and referrals. And then we serve mental health professionals who are in the field who want to get a better grasp of how they can incorporate in their practice these sorts of tools to better help former members recover. So we serve a whole wide range, as you can see, of diverse audiences. So with in-person events, that sort of mash makes us really quirky in a way.
Yeah.
It certainly provides challenges
yes.
because you have academics and then you also have really raw members of former groups who are there for recovery and support. And it's not to say that those can't mix. Certainly it needs to be mixed. And I feel very positively about that. But it is kind of quirky to put all of us in a room and, see how it goes and see how a conference operates. There's a lot of magic in a physical conference. As you know, Amy, with event planning, it's not so much the conference, it's the moments in between the conferences. It's the trip to the water fountain in the hallway and who you run into and who you connect with. And that sort of compatibility you find with people in different walks of life, I think is really important. So with an online event, obviously there's challenges surrounding that. So in July of this past year, we did a several-day event online, and we have running anywhere from like 4 to 5 tracks each day. So that's simultaneous video streaming, on different tracks. We utilize the event platform Whova, and I'll be speaking to their team in a fireside chat in the next coming weeks. And that's WHOVA, for any of those who are interested. But I contacted HUVA, and this is a huge scale conference. It's not just like a one track sort of deal. And HUVA was very accommodating, and they provide the social aspects that I wanted to incorporate so badly in a conference setting. So they provided ways in which I could have community boards set up. I can have icebreakers. People could directly message each other, which I thought was a really cool feature.
Awesome. So cool.
And there was just so many discussion posts going. Our organization won an award from HUVA for being one of the most active and engaging events.
Amazing.
And it's because how we utilize the platform to sort of serve these diverse audiences. I kind of had sectioned off questions for mental health professionals and community boards, academics, former members, and then to watch those worlds sort of collide even on an online sphere. It certainly lets you know that these things are possible. And even online, it can be done. There's a lot of benefits to online. We had, almost 450 people attend.
Yeah.
Whereas in an in-person conference, there's a lot more expenses. You have to buy a plane ticket, hotel, travel. It's just crazy, especially for a lot of people who are first leading Cultic groups and they have nothing financially, but they need these resources and support. This annual conference offered a way to do that.
That's
and
amazing.
Provide access to the videos afterward for up to like 30 days so that they can go back and watch what they missed and sort of take it in bits. So I felt like it was awesome in that for our first go at it, I thought the results were incredible. And I heard great feedback, and I've heard not so great feedback, and all those things have just been really helpful because next year we are planning our 2022 conference. It will for sure be online. Just
100%?
100%. Yeah, just because we have no idea what the COVID situation is going to look like. We're hoping by 2023 that we can maybe consider hybrid or, a smaller in-person thing, or see where that sort of leads in 2023.
Yeah. Interesting. So, okay, I have so many questions. One, so it sounds like you did a really great job here, kind of flexing and turning this thing online. So you changed your 2021 to all virtual. Did you have a conference in 2020 or no?
It was, so we didn't have our official annual conference in that it was supposed to be in Montreal, Canada in 2020. We had Montreal partners set up. We had a venue. We were pretty much ready to go. So when all of that, because of the COVID situation, didn't manifest, we, sort of scrambled per se, because we already had papers approved. We had speakers approved. So we shifted really quickly to an online model. And thankfully, during that time, during the year 2020, I was able to really do online events and get a feel for smaller online conferences to see how they operated, and what we could maybe do to accommodate, a larger scale conference. So anyways, so I kind of had these little practice runs with smaller conferences that were all going virtual because of COVID.
Got it. Yeah. So interesting. So in 2020, you realize you have to go virtual, and then instead of doing one big annual, you do like these mini conferences, as I understand.
Yeah, normally, so we have our annual conference, and then we also do regional events. So I'm normally traveling all over the country running these conferences for my job. Small part of my job, because I wear really hats. But I was everywhere from I helped coordinate an event locally in Portland, Oregon. I've been to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was in Nashville, Tennessee, running these conferences. Dallas, Texas came up, and we were supposed to be doing it in person in Dallas, and sort of, I don't want to say at the last minute, but certainly as things progressed, we realized very quickly this needs to go online, and that got postponed. And, we were sort of thinking, what do we do? So that went online, and that provided me an opportunity to run an event online for Dallas, and it went wonderfully. And I also had experience with Cult News 101, the team there, running the Uniting the Continents support for the Pacific Rim. And they brought me in to sort of help with like video editing and, help sort of get the tracks together as well. So
Amazing.
I've had these like little moments that kind of led up to this big moment. So
yeah. I mean, that's awesome. I don't know that everyone was was that lucky, I guess I want to say. Like, I think some people had to turn virtual really quickly, like their entire conference very quickly, and felt themselves really scrambling. So I love that you were able to kind of piece together these, as you call them, mini conferences, because wow, what a success then 2021 was.
It really provided a model of how we can best, do a larger scale event. It was still completely exhausting. I honestly spent hours on this project. I mean, we had every speaker pre-record their presentation because you know how technology can be, so that we could stream and then bring them in live for Q&A after we sort of cut the streaming. And I would be moderating kind of like you are now in this setting. And it was a lot. It was hours and hours of work and video editing. We had over 70 speakers. I mean, it was a very large scale event. But, and people were like, they're lucky to, have you do this. And honestly, I had to learn all of this. This is not what my degree's in communication. I'm getting my master's right now in psychology.
Awesome.
Like I didn't know how to do any of this, the technical stuff, video editing, all the mechanics behind it. I had to figure it out. I just had to like buckle down and figure it out. And I had a great team who helped me as well and supported me. So it was tough, and it's tough for a lot of people having to adapt to these sorts of things on top of all the responsibilities.
I mean, well, kudos to you and just kind of diving in and learning. I think, as a speaker myself, I remember the first recorded speech that I gave. It was a keynote and it was recorded and it felt really weird. And,
it's so weird. You don't have an audience. I've done a few pre-recorded talks as well. You don't have an audience. It's very sort of uncomfortable. And I had a lot of people reach out to me and they're just like, can you record me so that I feel like I have somebody? And I happily did. And afterward I'd be like, but I didn't want people to feel alone in this. And it's hard not to, honestly.
Yeah. It's definitely a different world. I was just talking to someone yesterday about this, but I'll give virtual presentations now, or virtual talks or virtual keynotes or whatever it is. But, you'll have however many people on the screen. And in some cases, there's only a handful that will even turn their camera on. And so now you're like speaking to a bunch of names. You just like wonder, who am I speaking to? Or am I speaking to anyone? Or what is their feedback? So it is definitely a challenge on both ends. I think on the event planner and as a speaker too, it's a challenge for sure.
There's a pressure and there's a tension, right, of like adapting and providing things online for people. I wonder how many people are getting sick of online though, because I know I am, in that we've been inundated with online. How much longer can we go to a computer for all these events and resources? And it's very valuable, but I think even that could be exhausting in a lot of senses. And there's certain events, like we had an upcoming Portland event. I was going to do a local ICSA partnered event out here. And it was scheduled for October. And it ended up getting canceled in that, the venue was like, this, and I didn't feel comfortable as an organizer having people come from out of state, putting them in a tiny room and say, enjoy,
good luck.
It's just not an appropriate time for that. And when we were planning it, things had looked a little bit differently. It was in like early summer. So we were really feeling good about where things were sort of progressing and going. But with Portland, that event is meant to be so intimate and fun. And not your typical sort of ICSA events. It's very special in a lot of ways. And not to say that other ICSA events aren't special, but it really has its own sort of Portland flair to it, just being out in Portland. And that we didn't feel like it was something that should be replicated online. And I wanted to be sensitive to that, in that, okay, there's resources out there, but let's not try to force an online model on something that, we don't want to try to replicate necessarily all these in-person things that may not be appropriate for online. We just, we wanted to just kind of let it sit and, perhaps do some smaller in-person, or not in person, but online meetups in the future. But there's this sort of tension of like, oh, we got to put it online, but also, can we really replicate what we want to online fully? And I don't think you can. So there is sort of this tension, right?
Right. I think this is really important because, when I had an event planning company like 10 years ago at this point, but at the time, I remember one of the things that we always said to our clients, which is nothing will replace face-to-face meetings. Nothing will replace face-to-face meetings. In one sense, I think we were trying to like secure our own job, and be like, hire an event planner. You need to have an event. But in another sense, it's really, really true. I don't think that anything really can replicate a face-to-face meeting or, a face-to-face event. There's just something, I'm going to use a word that you used earlier, but there's just something magical about human connection at that level that you simply cannot get online. And so as we kind of navigate this new world, it's interesting to learn like how we can do the best that we can. And like I pulled up Whova.
Yeah.
When you were talking, it's so interesting. I mean, I don't know if Whova existed before 2020 or before 2020.
Yeah.
So, but these platforms have exploded. And it's so interesting to see how each platform kind of puts their own twist on things to help the event planners to bring this all together. So did you test other platforms?
Yes. And I sat in on like informational meetings. The thing with these platforms, and you're right in that there's so many now, is they're very competitive because this is their area, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's time for these sort of virtual things, and some are getting bought out. And so we actually waited until like 2 months before the actual conference. So I had all the materials, I had all the recordings, I had all the things, and but I waited until 2 months before the conference before we chose and selected a platform. Because so many, if we would have done it a year in advance, I mean, so many had features added on, weekly, monthly. They were adapting, they were getting bought out, their prices were increasing or decreasing, or it was just a really intense market to sort of navigate. And so my advice, at least, was what we found was to wait. It was difficult because the last few months, it is really intense to sort of like get everything together on the platform, but Whova made it pretty easy. But it really is like, I recommend waiting a little bit longer. You want to do it a year in advance and get it secured, but there's so many options out there and they're changing every day.
Do you think you're going to continue with Whova?
I haven't decided yet. I feel like there was a lot of things that I loved about Whova. And I was really happy with the social engagement factor. I've looked at other platforms and they do have like social opportunities to connect, but Whova was something that was really geared towards social, communication online. And so I was really happy about that. And their customer service was really excellent. So Whova's a high contender. I am not yet certain. And it probably won't be decided again until 2 months before the conference, just to see. It's like, why do we do these things to ourselves? But it really
why
does
do
make
we
a
do
difference.
this?
Yeah.
But in this case, I think it feels like the right thing to do. It feels like, yes, it's stress at the end. but it's
Yeah, it
all,
feels wrong from like an event planning
yeah,
perspective. To
yeah.
have the platform be the last thing you do. That was the scariest part, I think. But at the end, it all worked out and it was okay. And knowing that Huva works and knowing that it worked, that just to see, I mean, I remember not sleeping the night before, like at all, and just hoping that it would work because I inputted, everything on Huva and again, they make it easy, but there's always that hesitancy of maybe this actually won't work. And it did. And I'm so glad it did. And as it was running and things were streaming, it was just like relief.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I have, okay, so what about this question? Like, how does that change the day of? Like, how, as an event planner, like, what's that like the day of, and how is that different than like a live the day? Because I feel like as an event, I was running around for live,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the time. So like, what
I
is
know what
that
that
like?
feels like. Yeah.
You just
Um,
sit behind your computer watching it all magically happen?
it's honestly really anticlimactic, is what I tell people. Like it
Yeah,
really is with in-person events, there's something about that excitement of seeing speakers in a room
yeah,
and seeing people sit there and like listen and just knowing that it's okay and it's working.
yeah,
And sort of getting a vibe and a gauge of how it's being perceived. But with online, you can't gauge anything in that you're not interacting with people. I was on the app constantly and that people were sending me messages, either questions or,
mm,
thank you for doing this. So I was kind of getting a gauge that way, but we had so many attendees that it was hard and that I couldn't read the room. So like I had no idea what people were thinking
right.
and feeling about the event. It was really intense in that we had, like I said, 4 to 5 tracks running, and one was in French. So I had, because we were still working with our Montreal partners for this online event, so I had designated track runners. 2 of them are in the same house together, and so we were each running our own Zoom tracks essentially, and Huva served as like an overlay to the Zoom tracks that we were running.
Okay.
Um, which sounds complicated and it kind of is, but it makes sense. And so we're each running our own Zoom meetings and people can hop in and out of sessions and do whatever they want. And the 2 people who are in the same home together, they were each running different tracks. Their power grid in their neighborhood goes down. So of course, it's like worst case scenario for any online event. And they were hysterical in that I get a call, stressed to the max. They're running down the stairs, they're grabbing the computers, they're heading over to the sister's house in the next neighborhood. These guys are in South Philly. So you know how like busy and like,
Yeah.
neighborhoods are. They're like the cars coming around, they're like yelling at each other, like, grab the computer, grab the laptop. It was hilarious. And it was only down for maybe 5 minutes, and the
Yeah.
power grid came back and they're like, never mind, we're gonna run back upstairs, and they were able to just get it back going.
Perfect.
So people lost the stream for a few minutes and it came back and it was fine and it recovered. So we of course you still run into moments like that. You kind of just prepare for the worst but hope for the best with these things. But my track runners did so well. I mean, there's a lot of things you have to remember with streaming, with helping with Q&A and moderation. It's easy for someone like you or I to do that because we're so used to doing this sort of thing, but these track runners weren't necessarily, and they did beautifully. And we were always checking in with our phones. We were in like a group message, and it was quite funny. It was quite chaotic in like a really sweet way. Like they were worried that things weren't showing up right. So we would like check in with each other's streams on our phones. And it was chaotic in the same way an in-person event would be, where you're just exhausted and you're pulled in different directions.
Sure.
But it was really sweet to kind of have that with the track runners. It was gauging the room and seeing how the event was going for the attendees. That was the part that was very difficult not knowing.
Yes.
And so I tried to push those post-event surveys. I wanted any sort of feedback just to know how people were feeling.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I honor you so much for all the great things that you did there, and and just the intelligence and the calmness that went into all that. So great job. One of my last questions is for the listeners, what, like, how can people support you? Like, what are you looking for this event? Are there certain sponsorships or something that you're looking for? There's a specific type of speaker that you're looking for? Like, how can we support you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our call for papers went out for the next conference, and the deadline is in October. And so anyone who wants to submit a call for papers, who wants to be considered for a potential speaker, now is the time to do that. And Amy, I'm sure you have my information as to the website and ways that people can get in touch, or my email. You're welcome to contact me directly. We accept proposals from all of our different constituencies. You could be a former member, you could be an academic, you could be a mental health professional. So we're interested in having new people join our community. And sponsors, submissions for like advertisements during the next virtual event, all of that will kind of be put out later, sort of a call for that. I would love, now that I know what an online event calls for, I'd love to put out a call for volunteers, for example, because now I understand the needs of an online event and how people can help. So I will plan on putting out a call for volunteers in the coming months. So just staying connected with ICSA online on our social media, you'll see when all those calls come out. And we have a committee who sort of works through all of that together.
Awesome.
And yeah, we're a nonprofit. We just put out these events. We have upcoming webinars that we're always doing. I'm pretty much always working on webinar programs. We have one exclusively, it's a CE monthly webinar series. We're trying to build up our mental health community so that I have more resources to provide those who contact us in a moment of need, who've left these Cultic groups. And I'm looking to really connect with people who've never interacted with the organization before. This is a great way to kind of learn from professionals who've been in the field a very long time and have served these sorts of populations. The bad news is it's completely sold out. It's sold out really fast. However, you can sign up to access the recordings, and there will be more opportunities for mental health professionals to get involved in the coming months, different programs that we're doing. So you can sign up to access the recordings, and all of this is in our link tree. I think I sent you our link tree, Amy.
Yep, I'll make sure that part's in the show notes.
Perfect. Where people can click on the link tree and look at the programs we're offering. We also have one coming up that has not yet been announced, but I can announce it here.
Hey, let's do it.
It's for SMGAs, so that's second generation adult former members and multi-generational adult former members. Also a tongue twister, it's very hard to say. It's a recovery program from those who were born and raised in Cultic groups, or whose parents were born and raised in Cultic groups, and it's generational in their families. So we're really trying to offer support to that community. What's really cool about this is that we're really opening this up. In the past, these sorts of events have been really tailored to only those in the community, and that we wanted to kind of keep that insular and provide resources for those. But now we're in a position with online, of course, where I would love for mental health professionals to watch, for example, so that they can understand the diverse needs of this particular population. Or those in the education field. So we're really opening this up beyond that insular audience of just SMGAs to those outside of that particular population, so that they can learn for those who are SMGAs and understand our diverse needs moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge, all your goodness, all the lessons yes, that you've learned. I honor you and I celebrate you so much. So Ashlen, thank you so much for being on the Happy Event Planner.
Thank you, Amy. It was a pleasure meeting you.